When did you first meet? Did you meet him first year there?
No, well, yes, my first year. Yes, because in that year I started, precisely because I started spending time with Irving. We were both in Henry Aiken's ethical theory class and met there, and so David was in the same room, but I didn't spend much time with him. But
he was Irving's roommate.
Yeah, they were roommates. Yeah. And David told me later that he had been amused at how intense I was, and struck by it with Irving in the conversations. You know, because he wasn't a part of it, but he was there, and he heard us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And he said he'd been struck with how intense I was in my conversation with Irving. But of course, I didn't have some particular self-image along those lines. But when he said it, I could see, of course, well, that was certainly true.
And what they call them a college? The dorm was called a college.
No,
is that right?
No, house.
House.
Yeah, he lived in Eliot House, and I lived in Dunster House. You know,
who was your roommate?
Very close to each other. I had a wonderful guy named Michael Thompson. His mother was American and his father was British in the Foreign Service. And so Michael, we were about as far apart as you could be in our sort of intellectual life, because he was a history student with a specialty in Middle East, which to me in those days meant nothing.
Yeah,
and of course, and he was always being sort of perplexed. He had this wonderful way of seeming to marvel at some phenomenon that he couldn't quite understand, namely me doing philosophy, you know.
Right.
And we got along beautifully, and totally different. And as I say, his mother was American, his father was in the British Foreign Service, and I think, I know he was aiming in the same direction, but strangely, maybe not, because I think people jump around. His first job after he graduated, he was actually a year behind me, but we were together. I think his first job, very soon, because I had letters to write, you know, and it was in the CIA.
Oh, wow.
I thought, well, I didn't think that's where you were heading, but he later went from there to the Foreign Service.
Wow.
Or whatever we call ours,
wow.
State Department, I guess.
Yeah.
Well, maybe within the State Department there's a branch called Foreign Service. I don't know. But you know, we didn't see each other again for years, and oh Lord, I mean 20 years, probably. He called me up one day, 20 years later, and I know what he had done. What was it? He knew I grew up in Richmond. He was always interested in the fact that we both were from Virginia, but you couldn't have been more different, because he lived in the place where people in government lived just outside of Washington, in Virginia. It's called Warrenton, Virginia, and it was very sort of pretty wealthy part of town. I don't think he was wealthy, but you know, you didn't have to be to live there. But anyhow, and I lived in Richmond, so I was brought up, you know, as a Southerner, as a Confederate, and he had nothing to do with that. Nothing.
Yeah.
I mean, he couldn't have been less interested in the Civil War than I was in Arabia, which he was so interested in.
Yeah. Well, when you say you were brought up as a Confederate,
well, what I mean is, I don't mean that people. My parents were Vermonters.
Right, that's what I mean. That's what I was going to ask.
What I mean is not what they did.
But you the culture at the school
what they
and
did,
things like that.
The environment was such that at age, you know, like 10, Robert E. Lee was my hero. Yeah. But they didn't do that. They just didn't stop me.
Yeah, right.
And I think I told you once, my uncle my mother's brother, there was only one brother in that family, everybody else was girls, was scandalized when I was up there once, and he found out that Robert E. Lee was my hero because I was a traitor, you know.
Yeah,
He gave my mother a hard time about it. But Michael had no connection with that, none whatever. So to me, it was much more surprising to me than to him, I'm sure, because I didn't know there was such a place.
Yeah.
He knew there was a place where I was.
Yeah, yeah.
But I didn't know there was such a place as his in the state of Virginia, you know.
Yeah.
But we got along so well. I liked him a lot.
Yeah.
We had bunk beds, and he was so big and tall that I said, "You take the bottom one," you know, which was easier. But I mean, say what you had was you had a big room, and then, you know, which was sort of your living room, and then off the living room you had a couple of bedrooms.
Oh wow!
Yeah, that's how it was set up.
Oh, so the living room, several bedrooms shared that.
Correct.
Yeah.
Well,
okay.
yeah. I mean, it would depend.
Yeah.
I don't, since we're only two of us, and actually, you know now, why were we in the same room? Maybe we had only one bedroom. In other words, you had every kind of variety in the various rooms, and so I don't think there couldn't have been two bedrooms, or we would have had separate bedrooms.
Well, I mean, were there two more people in another bedroom?
No.
Okay.
We were the only two people in the room.
So you had a 2-room
well, I don't know what you
setup.
call it.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I was in another one for a while where we had, oh God, we had 5 people in there, and you know, we had several rooms.
Yeah.
Bedrooms
Right.
off the central room.
Right. That's what I was thinking.
Yeah,
You were describing.
yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. I had bunk beds in my first dorm, and I took the bottom. I don't remember how we decided that. And then from then on, I think I was always in rooms where somebody who'd lived there before had made a loft so that both beds were up, and that gave you that much more space beneath. You know, so basically you created a living room beneath and it raised your beds up. Yeah.
Yeah. I didn't have that. I never counted that.
And the one was my sophomore year. Subsequently, in junior year at Colorado College, we were on the 4th floor of a dorm that was the top floor, and so rather than having a roof like this, a ceiling like this, we had one like this.
Yeah.
So we could make a loft that you could stand up in. You know,
I see.
but the one at Northwestern sophomore year, the beds, you had to be careful getting up, and I quite a few times would get up in a hurry and sit up and knock my head on the ceiling and just go back down.
Bad. Bad. No.
Yeah.
Oh dear. Don't like to think of that.
And those, I went back and visited when I was covering the White Sox World Series, probably 7 years ago. Saw that room again. And that room had been turned into kind of a living room, a relaxation room for the dorm. But so you said David was, well, or you and Irving were in the same Henry Aiken's class freshman year.
Pardon me?
Freshman year we're talking about, right?
No, my first year there was junior year because
right.
I had already been bunking, knocking around from one place to another until the war ended.
Right.
And
VMI and
Virginia,
was it Ole Miss?
Virginia, University of Virginia, and VMI, and then Ole Miss in the Navy. When I was in the Navy, they sent me down there. So it was 3 colleges I'd been to by that time.
Well, and so had you found philosophy on the way?
You know, I had in a way, but not really. I mean, yes and no. I had found enough to be curious about
Okay.
it, but not enough to have done anything at all with it.
Yeah.
Nobody, I took one course, but the guy that taught it, you know, it was like a history of philosophy course, and it didn't, he didn't do a thing for me,
Yeah.
and I didn't do anything with it either, but
Mhm.
it really interested me, but I could see I wasn't doing anything with it in that situation, and he wasn't either. So I thought, okay, if I go to the top place, it'll be very different as opposed to it was.
Yeah. Yeah.
So when I got there, I started right in.
And was
And-
Aikens the first course
Yeah,
you had?
first
Yeah.
term. Yeah, very first
Yeah.
term. Very first term.
Yeah.
Yep. And you know, Irving had been knocking around in his own way in that wartime period too. So he came in the same status I had.
It was his first year there too.
Yeah, first year,
Mhm.
but we both had 2 years as undergraduates, and then
Right.
went on to graduate school at the same place, of course,
Yeah.
with same teachers
Yeah.
and some of the same students, because in your senior year you overlapped with some graduate students. If you were majoring in philosophy.
Hmm.
But Michael died
Mm.
somewhat young, I think, because after he had called me, and we sort of thought we thought we'd get together, and he was living in Washington, and I was in the outskirts somewhere, College Park probably, and so I tried to locate his number and everything. Later on, couldn't find it, and he had told me about a close friend of his who was who at this time was head of the Congressional Library,
Mm-hmm.
which is a big job, and I've forgotten his name, but his name was quite familiar to me because it came up in the news, and it was often political news, and the reason he mentioned him to me was because I'm trying to think what it was. Something to do with linking me and him, and wait a minute. I don't know. I don't know, but it.
Yeah.
Anyhow, so then I couldn't find him, and I called him up and said he died. You know, I mean, he could have been in his 60s. I don't mean he was very young, but you know, quite a shock. And so
Yeah.
I didn't get to see him again in all those years
Yeah.
later.
Yeah.
I was really sorry about that.
Yeah.
Big, tall, gawky fellow.
Well, I definitely. There's not too many people I see from college, but I do
Sorry?
see. There's not too many people I still see from college, but I do see people from high school,
You see him from high
from
school.
elementary school.
That's where you
Yeah.
have him.
Yeah.
That's the connections you
But I
kept.
also see them from camp.
Yeah, all
yeah.
those things that,
Yeah.
other than the latest phase of your education, which is
Yeah.
college.
And the latest for me would be graduate school, and I do. There are some. One of my closest friends is from graduate school.
Yeah.
That I see out in Colorado.
Yeah.
I've almost forgotten that that's how we know each other, but
Right.
it is.
Right.
Of course, Wells and I were at graduate school at the same time.
Oh, is
at
that
same
right?
place.
You mean same place?
Yeah, different. In Boulder.
Yeah,
He was in getting an MBA.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, I had visited him there the previous year. Well, yeah, when I applied at the school, I visited him, stayed with him.
Yeah, yeah.
Then he finished after my first year.
God, I had a strange experience. In the Navy, I knew a fellow, liked him a lot. And he we got along a lot, named Tony, shoot, I want to say Russo, I think, or something like that. And he's Italian and sort of stocky and dark. But very jovial. Anyhow, when we got out of the Navy, it would have been June and college began the fall, and I had, while in the Navy, I did all the stuff to get into Harvard, and he had gotten into Brown. And so, like in the first days when you got there, before classes began, he and his roommate, who had also been in the Navy, and he'd gotten to know him there, but who had also been in my high school in my classroom. In other words, I had known him before Tony did, but not known him well. He was no friend of mine, but just happened to be in the classroom. You know, okay? But I mean, in fact, classroom, homeroom, I think it's like all the way through 3 years.
Yeah.
For Christ's sake, I mean, I couldn't possibly forget him. So, Tony and this fellow, Walter Moisky, they came up a few days before class. They came up from Providence just to see me, and that was wonderful. And 50 years later, reunion. 50 years later, the reunion, here's Walter Moisky looking just, one of those people who looked just as he always had looked.
Yeah.
And he was with his wife. And I said, well, last time I saw you was with Tony Russo. He said, how do you know Tony Russo? I said, Walter, you and he came up to see me. He had a total blank.
Yeah.
Total blank.
Yeah.
Isn't that something? I mean, really. I mean, I guess I know I've got total blanks, but that seemed very quick.
Yeah.
You know, it really wasn't very quick, I know. But it was a big surprise. It just seemed like I was looking at him, you know, and he's looking at me, and total blank. How did you know him? I said, Walter, the two of you came up to see me. And he had a blank.
Yeah.
And I mean, his wife was sitting there wondering, what is this? And I was a little embarrassed because I made him look a little foolish, but assuming she may have thought I was crazy, you know.
That was what, 15 years ago, roughly?
God, when was it? Yeah, I guess you're right. I don't know. 50 plus 18, in my case 17. 67?
Yeah. So that is
I'm 85.
Ooh.
Ooh.
18, is that 18 years, huh? Yeah, 18 years.
Yeah, 80, yeah. Good Lord. 50th anniversary, 18 years ago.
Yeah.
Oh dear. No more anniversaries, I think. Class anniversaries. Ole Miss was fun. It was not a first-rate place, you know. But, yeah, I mean, you could only do so much with what they gave you, and so you had a lot of fun, you know. And you're in the Navy, and what the hell, I mean. It was not then. It's much, much more now than it was then. Not a particularly good university. I mean, the South was still totally swamped intellectually by the continued belief that the black man was inferior to the white man. Now all that's gone.
Yeah.
And Ole Miss is a pretty good place now.
Was I associate it with Faulkner to some degree? I don't know.
Yes, he lived in Oxford.
Okay.
That's what it is.
So were you conscious of him when you were there?
No, nobody ever talked about him.
Yeah.
I had a literature course, introduction, and it didn't get to Faulkner. I mean, it started way back. but the guy never even mentioned him either. So I didn't know a thing about Faulkner the whole time I was there.
Well,
and there he was living in the city.
yeah.
But he didn't have much to do with the university either.
Yeah.
Later on, in those days, he didn't want much. Later on, Faulkner took a fancy to being a sort of Southern gentleman. What happened is, he was late in his career. I mean, God damn it, he'd written all his major works by now. Of course, he kept writing till the end, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
But the ones that made him famous were all written, and that's why he was where he was, which was a visiting artist at the University of Virginia.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Virginia for a Mississippian is the aristocracy.
Yeah.
Mississippi is the garbage heap of the Confederacy, and Virginia is the aristocratic top of it.
Yeah.
So here he was. Not that he wasn't probably a reasonably genteel fellow anyhow, but he came up there, and I sat in one class. That was enough for me, and he was being the Southern gentleman. I thought, what the hell is this? I mean.
You're disappointed?
Yeah, I was very disappointed. I mean, but it happens,
What was the class? Was it literature?
It was literature, yeah. I don't remember exactly,
writing,
what literature was. It could have even been writing,
And was it the first class that you went to, or
no, just
you just sat in the middle of the
on
term?
his class.
It wasn't like you were going to take it and then you dropped it the
it could
first
have been
day.
the first day of the class.
Yeah, that's what I meant. That's what I meant. Yeah.
Probably was because it's a little awkward to do it the other way. But I said, forget it.
Yeah.
I mean, go to the books.
Yeah.
But I actually, that's often the case. I mean, the best philosopher we had in our department, you were totally influenced by a couple of books he wrote, and you got nothing from his classes.
This was
he just wasn't interested.
This was as a student.
Pardon?
When you were a student.
Yeah. In the graduate school.
Who was that?
C.I. Lewis.
Oh yeah. Okay.
He just wasn't. I don't know. You say wasn't interested. That's hard to describe what the hell he was.
Yeah.
He wasn't skilled. It wasn't his thing, and so he had over the years, because by now he was a man ready to retire. So, 65, I would guess, which to me was quite old then. And I think he didn't have teaching in his bones, and so he had worked out his own way to do it, and it was not effective.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought, okay, this isn't doing me any good. His books are wonderful, but his classroom self is of no use to me at all.
Well, I think that must happen a fair amount.
I imagine
that
so.
there are people who,
yeah,
their work brings them, makes them attractive, but it's not necessarily mean that the thing that makes them a brilliant mind isn't going to necessarily make them a good teacher.
Exactly right. Exactly, absolutely so.
Yeah.
No necessary connection really. There might be some fields where I don't think so. No, more likely than others to match, but not a guarantee ever. I think. Really couldn't be a guarantee. It's a shock, though, the first time you run into it.
Well, I think there's probably a lot of people who get into teaching because they enjoyed being a student, and they enjoyed the learning and the exploring and the and all that. What's that?
I wouldn't have thought so. I mean,
people who are driven to teach.
Pardon?
People who are driven to teach, who possibly more, maybe that they're more attracted to teaching than the particular subject matter.
Well, that's probably true.
Michael Sarbanes was saying the other night that he wants to teach, and oddly he wants to teach science, and he doesn't know what in science he wants to teach, and he's never been a science guy really. But
but where does he want to teach? In high school?
I think high school.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I think what you're saying is probably true of some high school teachers.
Yeah.
But really, if it's college, you should be active in the discipline
Yeah,
itself
yeah.
to be good. You
And
know,
to stay there,
you're
yeah.
supposed to be
Yeah,
out there
yeah.
making a few inches progress at least.
Yeah.
I remember being startled, absolutely, at Ole Miss. I mean, there's such a difference between there and here in the culture. As you know, between classes, I've probably told you this before because I'll never get over it. You had this big round green, and you had, paths that were made to cross it, going from one building here to one building over there.
Yeah, yeah.
So you're all going crisscross,
Yeah.
and literally, and you're passing all these people you don't know and never will know. You say hey to everyone.
Yeah, yeah.
I told you that before, didn't
Yeah.
I? I never get over it.
Yeah.
Hey, 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 hey. Well, you get so you just do it almost mechanically.
Yeah.
Hey, 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 hey. Oh dear. I was talking to somebody the other day. No. It was a year or two ago. It was the editor of a magazine that I had submitted a piece to. I guess it would be a philosophical journal, must have been. No, it could have been literary.
Yeah.
And she was teaching at Ole Miss, and I told her that story. She said, "It's still like that. Isn't that wonderful? Still like that," she said.
Yeah. Well, I think that was one of the things I noticed in such a change going from Northwestern to Colorado College, which wasn't a huge difference, but I think it was 12,000 at Northwestern, and this wouldn't explain Ole Miss because Ole Miss was probably bigger than that.
Yeah.
But Colorado College was more like, what was 3,000 or less? It might have been less. Might be more like 1,500. I'm not sure, but you got to where you recognized everybody on campus.
Oh, really? Is that right? Is that right?
Yeah, and and partly because in my fall term there, I did a play and had a song, a solo that stood out. That it just seemed everybody on campus was saying something to me after that play ran.
I see. Yeah.
And,
Yeah. Well, that's interesting. It could only be so big, I think.
And it isn't that you know them.
No, I
or know their name or anything like that. Yeah.
They're familiar.
And you do. It is like you said with those paths. You do fall into some patterns, and so you're on the path at the same time, in the same days. And
Right. That's true. Yeah.
Maybe hundreds of people who would never go on that path that you never saw. I guess we have a reunion coming up. I get confused about what class I'm in there because I started in the class of '86, but I finished in the class of '87.
Really?
Well, as a result of transferring and just the way my schedule worked out, and I think mainly because of the block plan, taking one course at a time, I ended up taking two courses in 1980, 2 blocks, one course, 2 blocks in 1987. So 2 months of school puts me in that class.
Really? Huh.
But I think...
so, you mean when you first went in, you were 86?
Yeah, and it just took me until 87
But do you think, one thing that happens is that the year that somebody graduates doesn't determine what their class is, because for various reasons sometimes people get late or so on,
yeah.
But they stay in their original class. At least it may vary with the college, But it could be that whatever you started with is what you ended up with.
It might be, yeah. And I feel sort of a double affiliation, that there's the class I was with, and then there's the class that I graduated with.
See.
And
well,
I knew them equally well. It didn't seem to make a whole lot of difference. So I haven't paid too much attention. But I get invited to both reunions.
Is that right?
Reunions, yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Well, heaven knows there may be no such thing as your one and only class.
Yeah. Well, part of it is I don't know if it's maybe that it's the students doing more of the inviting, and so they're just both sets think of me as one of them, which is fine. I may have had more friends in that second class. I don't know. But having transferred, I didn't have as much time to get to know the first class. I wouldn't mind looking up the man who was my advisor at CC, who was very good and taught me one class, but was a very good advisor and was a writer and published a lot of novels and plays. He was a playwright too, and was someone that, as it turns out, Mom knew from Fieldston.
What's the name?
Yaffe.
What? Yaffe.
Jim Yaffe.
How do you spell the last name?
Yaffe.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe two E's. Probably two E's.
Two E's?
I'm not sure if they're two E's.
F-F-E. Yeah, I got you, yeah. Well, that name sounds...
Yeah.
Now that you spell it, that sounds somewhat familiar to me.
And he ended up moving back to New York. I kept in touch with his daughters. I would see them around. They were close to my age.
They went to college?
They were... Well, the thing was, he would have people over to his house a lot.
Oh, I see.
And...
so you got to know his family?
Yeah, I got to know them at the house. And that was... that was nice.
Yeah.
I mean, that was... made an impression.
Yeah.
And that was something that Jerry Downs did also. Would have students over to the house.
So what kind of class did you take with him?
Well, it was a creative writing, independent study, actually.
Right.
But that's when I wrote... I guess that's when I started
Your honors thesis?
my novel, yeah. I sat in on some of his classes every now and then. He's someone who taught the Bible as literature.
Sure.
Yeah. But he mostly, he had an enviable load, I thought, because he would basically teach one semester and write the other semester.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And I think
do you think he was paid for the year?
I think you could do it that way at CC with the schedule by just loading up fuller, taking 5 blocks in a row,
I see.
and then having 4 off in a row.
In other words, doing
instead
a year,
of
a year in one term.
Yeah.
That's
and
cool.
he advised throughout the year, and he was not very many. I don't think very many people took it as seriously as he did advising. I don't know how many took it seriously at all, but certainly not very many took it as seriously as he did. He was very active. But I think his writing classes were, I might have had trouble being interested in the Bible as literature.
Yes, of course. Yeah, right.
But the writing classes, I did sit in on those and really enjoyed those.
Yeah.
Learned a little. But yeah, the other one, it was an independent study, really. So it was one-on-one stuff. Yeah, God, it's hard to believe at this time last night I was at Harvard Square.
Isn't it though? My God. Lord.
I wanted to have time to amble around more, and but it's interesting that ended up at a place you knew, the Brattle Theater.
Yes, yes, of course. I would like to have been there, but not to get there and back.
Yeah. Oh, and there were definitely some pictures that I could recognize must have been Daytona Beach of David. Right? Yeah, just from the fauna. You know,
right.
Or flora.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, a few lizards maybe.
Yeah.
Count for the fauna.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you know, I guess you know that. I know you knew it. When I was there, he lived there until age 14.
Yeah.
Till he went off to Exeter.
Right.
Well, you know, funny thing is, maybe they still live there, but I always think of his mother as being where he is. But she might have just taken a place, you know, and rented, and they still lived in Daytona Beach. Mm-hmm. I don't know. Mm-hmm. I don't know the answer. One would suppose they must have done that until at least, I don't know when. It's a peculiar sort of life she lives, so I can't work it out by inference whether they kept the house, you know, when they dropped the house.
Yeah. Well, I wanted to. I think I'm changing the subject probably. I don't know if there was a connection, but somehow I was thinking of. Well, I think I was thinking of Lewis Sibley and you know, his youth and the guy Andy Lewis who talked about his war experience and talked and was cheered off the stage.
I see.
You know, at one point, the audience somebody had gone up and said something to him, whispered in his ear, you know, like, you got to wrap it up, and he said, I have to wrap it up, and he went on for another 10 minutes or so, and then at some point people just started clapping, and you know, he was in the middle of a sentence, it was nowhere near, they just started clapping, just like, you know, good job, you're done, you know,
really?
Stage, yeah. And
isn't that something?
And then Lewis went up at that point because it was a little embarrassing.
Well, of
and
course.
Lewis went up and he said, I think we're getting the message that we have to wrap it up, but why don't you find a way to finish?
Right,
and,
right.
This is an important thing to get to. And
he
said, at the end of my life, I'm cut down on my bloom. You know, and he was very emotional about it, I think, because it was such an important thing to David. And he wanted to share that with everybody. And I wanted to, what I was going to say is I told Lewis I'm going to ask you for his email because I want to write him a note and thank him for sharing that.
I see.
And would you think he's likely to? You likely knew each other, so I could mention.
No.
No. Okay.
I didn't know
okay.
him. I knew of him somehow.
Okay.
I don't know how I knew of him, but the name was familiar to me in those days, and I think it's partly because I kept wondering whether he was C.I. Lewis's son.
Right.
No, I didn't know him.
Yeah.
But I was a class before him too, 48. He was 49, I think.
Yeah, he was. Yeah. But you know, it's funny. Afterwards, somebody said, you know, it isn't as though we haven't sat through some pretty long experiences in this theater, you know, before. And he said, we'll have to do that. I said, well, you'll have to do that next time. I said this. I was like, next time you see a really bad play here, just start applauding in the middle of the first act. I said, very good, you're done. Leave the stage, please. Can we go home now?
That's a nice thought.
Yeah.
Well, you had a new sort of response tradition started during that whole ceremony with this clapping together.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever seen that.
Yeah, it's pretty effective.
But when he finally did leave, they gave him a standing ovation.
Oh, really?
And you know, I think it was sincere. I mean, it was a very friendly crowd, but it was really getting long. I mean, he was pushing a half hour.
Yeah. Mm, 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 mm. But still, I don't know. There's something wrong with somebody that does that, I think.
Yeah.
It's annoying. And it's just too egotistical, I think, to my mind.
Well, you know, it happens all the time in my experience with politicians who come to
Oh, God.
these
yeah.
meetings, community meetings, and have, 5 or 10 minutes to give a little fill in
Yeah.
update, and just don't notice that they're going 20 to 30 minutes.
Yep, yep.
And I had to one meeting that I was coordinating, and we just didn't have time. We had so much to do, we didn't have time. And I set the alarm after he was 10 or 15 minutes over time.
Yeah.
I set the alarm on my clock to go off in a few minutes, and when it went off, I let it ring a little bit. And,
Yeah, of course.
and
Good work.
and
Yeah.
But what I'm gonna do in the future, I think I tried to do it then, and I just wasn't emphatic enough. But let people know that, I think I'll set an alarm, so we have a sound that says, okay, that indicates, when you hear that, it indicates you're going over, and I'm not gonna drag you off, but just know that when you do that, you're using someone else's time, and they're not gonna be able to speak because you're keep on talking. It's really our old rep, Daniel Kagan, who has the worst of that. He's such a good speaker, the one from England who had the Wordsworth House up in the Lake Country.
Who's that?
Grasmere, I guess.
What?
Daniel Kagan, my representative, who's now no longer, he was redistricted out of me, but out of my district. But the one who had the house where. Was it Grasmere?
Over in England.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. The house that he...
I guess the house of his friend.
Hold on a minute.
Words with Friends, where he wrote the poem, is the poem Grasmere? Does he have a poem, Grasmere? Or is that the name of the house? I think that's the name of the house.
No. I think I've got to recollect this thing.
But a close friend of Wordsworth.
That's right. I know who it was.
He would stay there often.
Who it was, yeah. I know.
And he wrote one of his well-known poems.
Well, I think the point is that the lake, whether it was in the house or not, I don't know, but the lake is where he saw the daffodils.
Exactly.
That
poem.
famous poem.
Yeah, that's that one.
And he did stay with that guy. I know who that man was.
Yeah.
He was independently interesting. I had already read a book of his because he was very active in the outlawing, the move to outlaw slavery in England.
Right.
Yeah. So, you're right, and that was the lake where the daffodils were.
Yeah.
There's another poem that he wrote that's also set nearby, and I had to work that one out and then talk to your friend there to see if I was getting close to figuring it out, because it was something like, the name of the poem is something like Airy Force. Maybe something comes after that, I'm not sure. Well, the airy part has got some representation on that lake, like a village or something.
Right.
And force is a word from that part of the country for a waterfall.
Right, okay.
And it turned out there was indeed a stream called Airy, and it culminated in a waterfall and then went on into the lake there.
I'm trying to think, it's Hopkins. Did you like him at all?
Oh yeah,
Gerard Manley
I
Hopkins?
don't read him much, but I guess I shouldn't really say I like him. But I mean, I admire him, but he's not to my taste very much.
There was a poem of his I used to like a lot. It was one of the few poems I had committed to memory. I never really
I
did
can
that.
believe it, because he wrote some good stuff.
And it was about a waterfall, which I think may have also had another name for it. A burn, maybe? Or
no, I don't know. I don't know. I wouldn't think so.
No.
Who knows?
Boy, I'm blacking out on the name. This on horseback brown, the fleece of its flown, and low to the lake falls home. These are little bits of it, not in order. Low to the lake falls home. Force. You think you're getting ready for bed?
No.
Oh.
Bathroom.
Okay. Do you think it's too late to start the movie? Or?
I gotta focus
Okay.
at this point on
Okay.
this hazardous thing
Yeah.
where I need to go, and I've waited too long.
Okay. What would the world be once bereft of wet and wildness? Let them be left. Long live the wet and the wilderness yet.
Good, very good. Yeah, I can see your point.
Yeah.
Say it
And
again.
it-
Say it
and
again
even,
slowly.
I think there's an O in there that I left out.
Say it
O
slowly.
left-
What?
Well, this is at the end of it.
I know, but say it slowly.
What would the world be once bereft of wet and wildness? Oh, let them be left.
That's the end.
Long live the wet and the wild and the wilderness yet.
I see.
Yeah.
Very, very good. Yes, yes, yes. So maybe those last three lines could have been left out. If you have them right.
Yeah.
Because long live is pretty non-fresh,
Yeah.
to say the least.
Yeah. Yeah, and the first part of it is, it always struck me as it was like a waterfall. I mean, the language and the poem was,
see.
and it was capturing a kind of a drop going down the fall and fully engaging you in it.
I'd have to look at the poem, see what it says. Jesus, oh Christ. Perkins.
Do you think the cane would help at all, or the walker? Because it seems like you have less trouble walking on the street when you use the walker than you do in the house.
No. I don't walk in the street except with the walker.
Yeah, I mean, and I think you're able to go most of the length of a lot. With that.
Yeah.
Whereas much shorter in the house without anything.
Well, I don't want to think about that.
Yeah.
It's not worth trying to make that calculation. It's not going to work.
Mm-hmm.
Son of a bitch, you son of a bitch.